speaking of the raid, that was obviously quite a well, probably mostly critical as far as many saying it was too easy, especially contest mode. What were your thoughts on that?
I think that it's really weird when you sit there and you look at something like Neomuna and the enemies out there on patrol are technically tougher than the raid enemies. I mean, that... it's just very odd.
I couldn't understand. I was like, why are they still swords? I was like, you keep leveling up, and it's like, are they going to become like normal at any point? Why are they still? And they're like, oh, apparently it's just always got contest mode on in patrol. It's like, why is patrol harder than the contest mode raid?
And like, I'm fine with patrol being a little bit harder. It actually makes Neomuna a very engaging area, but the I think it's the sort of how weird it feels in contrast to the raid, where you would sit there and you would, on day one, things were a little bit harder, a little trickier, but like, you'd be sitting there at the moment when contest came off and you were just smacking things back and forth with a glaive in one hit, and you're like, what am I doing? This is totally brainless. Like, mind off. Meanwhile, in Neomuna, you're actually using cover and you have to deploy a proper build, and you're sitting there and it's like, okay, yeah, I'm doing all of this stuff and I'm properly engaged in the combat. It's a really weird place to be. It made it great for when I was trying to explain the raid to a bunch of people, and like, that's fantastic, but not everybody is sitting there being the lore nerd of each raid. So the the one silver lining there exists in the minority of people who are sitting there and expecting the raid to be so easy that they can literally tell a story at the same time. I'll say this too. Endgame content should be endgame, like, the master raid exists, but it leads me to the idea and the question mark, and I really want to know what you think of this. Do you reckon that this was made with the intent of ensuring that it launched alongside the LFG feature, which was potentially delayed? Because if you ask me, this would have been a perfect raid to launch with LFG.
It's a good point. And they did initially plan it to be around the same time, and they had to push it back, right? It was initially...
Yeah, which, assuming that is indeed what's happened, it would make perfect sense, because you're sitting there and you have LFG opening up with a much easier raid experience, but something that is immediately relevant to the times. I think, I can't help but think that's what's happened, but what do you think?
I think that the raid mechanically is very simple. Like, I think it's one of the simplest raids. You literally just stand in the thing, shoot the ball, go here. It's just, it is very, very simple mechanic wise. It's very simple to explain. I was surprised how easy, like, I was, used to previous raids of just like, we've got to memorize 26 symbols and you got to turn left and spin around 3 times and shoot the dove and then change weapons and then like try and recite the alphabet backwards. Like, it's just ridiculously complex mechanics that you just get used to. Mainly just symbols of just like, it's the downward facing bird that's eating an orange. Like, it's just like, I don't even know what that's, just symbols are mainly, and that was very prevalent in Val. But mechanic wise, it was very simple, very easy to explain. Like, I didn't even plan on doing contest mode. I was like, nah, I'll just do the regular mode. Like, I'm good. I don't really feel like the soul crushing stress of contest mode. But then it came out. I mean, it's funny. I was watching the raid race as it came out, and I was making food while it was out. And then by the time I had sat down with my food, they were on the final boss already. And I was like, wait, what happened? And then by the time I came in here to watch the rest of it, someone had already like nearly killed Nezarec. And I was like expecting this, like this is going to be just on in one of my monitors just all night. And, for 6 hours, 12 hours, just see how they do. And I was like, oh, they've already like beat it. Like, and then I was very surprised how quickly it was done. And then, and the next day, and then got a group, and then it was like, oh, I guess I did zero prep at all. Obviously I was leveled, but that's not too difficult. But ended up doing contest mode, and it wasn't the entire raid. I think we just one phase like all of it. And then Nezarec took us a few hours, although we did get hit with the glitch where you kill him and then he kills you at the same time, which was quite annoying.
Oh, the worst.
I think they fixed it since, but we literally like did enough damage. He's dead. Health bar is empty. And then he's still, it's just when he starts the wipe mechanic at the same time as you kill him, and then he wipes you anyway. And then, but that was annoying. But for contest mode, I don't know. I think it's pretty, a lot of people, it's a very divisive subject. There's a lot of gatekeepy conversations and a lot of elitist conversations. But I think, the raid is the raid. It's meant to be difficult, and the contest mode is meant to be the most difficult thing in all of Destiny.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there's any downside to the contest mode raid being difficult. I don't think that many people should disagree that the contest mode should be not accessible to most people. And I was prepared to be like, it's too much stress.
I'm going to jump in there and say something here. Accessibility and difficulty have all to do with each other. Like, they are not related conversations, right? Like,
they should
when
be,
when it comes down to it, it's why I'm very much for the idea of having something like VOW, where you had... I mean, technically this wasn't planned, but you had 48 hours worth of contest mode time. That's good, but also make it a hard raid. I'm okay with it being hard on that first moment, especially considering this is what the peak and pinnacle of most Destiny players are going for. Your team that has come together in the last few moments and has just kind of assembled out of nowhere, occasionally they actually can win worlds first. Like, sure, that does happen, but for the most part, it is now teams that are of that caliber where they're practicing a whole ton and doing a whole bunch of stuff. And like, when it truly does come down to it, that's what I think day one contest raiding should be about. Like, it is spectacle and it is stunning, and it should be one of those moments where you are watching your favorite teams push forward. It really should be that kind of contest of wills. And I'm okay with that. I'm glad we no longer have the kind of like incredible Riven experiences where two teams make it, but I'm also not in the place where I think that we should have been looking at contest mode being quite as easy as it was. I
think it makes it more of a spectacle. Like, I'm not saying it should be full on Last Wish, but I wouldn't even be too mad if it was like close, because there's something, it makes it interesting. If it's like, oh, have you heard this new raid? It's so difficult. Like, it creates just more of an interesting conversation of like, well, it's so difficult, only two teams. Like, the way people talk about Last Wish adds to its kind of legendary status, and you just can't get that by it being easy. And I think a lot of people here, when you hear like, I guess, players who play it, like really hardcore experienced players, say it's too easy, some people hear that as if like it's kind of gatekeeping, like, no, casual players shouldn't be able to do that. But it's not really that. That's kind of secondary. The main argument that more experienced players would have is that if you want to do something that's difficult, you want the feel. If you want to do something impressive, it has to feel like it's difficult and like you did something that most people can't do. It has to be something impressive. But if it's something that is just, oh yeah, you just hop on, grab an LFG and do contest mode without too much thought, then you don't feel like you accomplished much. And I think that's what most people are getting at. They want to feel like, I did something difficult that is hard, like we did Last Wish.
We didn't do that thing, right?
Yeah.
And respectfully, like when it comes down to it, again, it's another reason why I'm very pro 48 hours, because you should have your chance to try. It should be hard. Like, we should make the thing literally as easy to access as possible. Like, legendary campaign giving you the bumps to get up to level. Yeah, go for it. Like, getting the exotic ciphers out of your season pass track and whatnot, and getting the ability to get a few key exotics that might help you if you're doing it first time. Absolutely. But it's a hard grind to get there, and you will absolutely be going up against some of the most skilled teams in the world. So like, it's going to be really, really tricky doing all of that.
I think the feeling that we have about Last Wish, because we did it, I think we got like nearly top 100. I think our team was like top 10 on console, because almost everyone was on PC. We were one of the only people playing console. But we have a sense of accomplishment, because it was like, that was very difficult, and we were just like throwing ourselves against a wall for just like, I don't even know how many hours. But then once you do it, you get accomplishment. But and again, I'm not saying every raid should be like that, but you create the feeling of, I did something impressive when it's difficult and hard to do. And it's not about not about casual players not being able to do it. It's about skilled players being tested. It would be satisfying to go on Twitch or YouTube live stream and to see, so these are some of the best players in the world and they are struggling. It makes you feel like a sense of, oh, this is a big deal. But when they just kind of breeze through it, it's a bit like, oh, guess that's the raid. But
and here's the other thing, right? These comments, it should be made really clear as well, apply to contest mode. Like, the first 48 hours worth of the activity. Afterwards, I'm very okay with the idea of a raid dropping down in terms of difficulty.
Absolutely.
Like, those skilled players will then call it easy no matter what, even if it isn't a Nezarec situation, because it is just one of those moments where they are built for this. They're geared properly. They are prepared. They're ready. You know, like when we sit there and ended up completing Last Wish for the first time, you know, we were amongst 1,000 players in the world that had done that. We are both of us have 2 of the 1,000 or so Riven jackets in existence. But when you sit there and look at Riven now, yeah, it's a really, compared to most other bosses, it's actually quite a tough experience, but
very mechanical.
It's actually still got the mechanical kind of density to it that gives you that sense of satisfaction. But you can teach it, you know, you can sit there and you can bring someone along for the ride, and you can make it so that they're not just sitting in the back constantly. Like, they can have a role in the thing. They can actually pick up bits and pieces to it that they need to do. And every member of the fire team can feel really important there. So, you know, it's one of those moments where this moment, these 48 hours at the beginning of it, are really the kind of the basis of this conversation, you know? Like, this is something which you are tailoring to a certain proportion of the player base, right? And on the flip side of things, you know, it's like, this is something which should be not so, this is something that shouldn't be easy, right? This is something which should test you and should give you that sense of pride and accomplishment. Haha, I know, indeed. The meme. But, you know, contrast that with a campaign, right? Campaign, I would say you should sit there and it's something where everyone needs to be able to access that. And it needs to be easy. It needs to be something where at the first outset, yeah, you can absolutely have your legendary mode, particularly if you're trying to prep for a raid. But when you're looking at the campaign itself, making it so that it is easy is never something I think I'm going to complain about. Like Destiny 2 vanilla, you know, everybody gives Bungie a hard time for this particular one little bit, but they actually made one of the first puzzle rooms in the first mission easier to complete. And you know, this is something where it's got that thing where it was just like a spinning little rod within the platform that could kill you if it hit you.
Yeah.
You know, like
on
there were people who were ridiculing everybody for not being able to do that. But you got to remember, like, those are the campaign missions where some people are picking it up and playing for the first time. Yeah. They may not be in that place where they're that dexterous with jumping. So
yeah, there used to be the 2 rotating things, and then again, players like us, it was just a simple step down. But to some people, if you never played Destiny more, maybe you got stuck there for a while.
And it's like, that's the exact inverse of this conversation, if you get what I mean. Like, this is a moment where it's clearly going to be played by everyone, whereas a contest raid day 1 is not. And it's something where people are absolutely going to watch, but it's something where players are preparing for the hardest possible experience in Destiny, and they're looking for something that's going to test their mettle and give them a sense of accomplishment and provide them some glory if they complete it, you know? And I think that's kind of, you build for the experience you're aiming to create. And in the instance of a campaign, you're aiming to create something that is easy so that people can actually get into it. And that if it is your first time ever playing a first-person shooter, it's not totally brutal. You wouldn't put someone who's never played a first-person shooter through Last Wish on week 1. You know, conversely, you wouldn't put a contest mode raid at the level of difficulty of a first campaign mission in a shooter. You know, like, it's just two different beasts, so to speak. So yeah, that's kind of the way I'd go ahead and frame it, is just like, build for the experience as it's supposed to be, you know, like, absolutely make it accessible, like, give everybody the tools, like the full auto tool, for example, fantastic. The ability to sit there and say like, hey, Destiny is now compatible with, you know, more colorblindness options from way back when in the day. Like, give people the ability to play the game, make it easier for people to actually play the game to the same level of skill that professionals do. I'm okay with everything on that particular front of it, because you know, like, people should be able to play and enjoy the depth that this game offers. But then, you know, give everybody who has been given that equity the challenge all at once, and give them all the glory.